Late one stormy night in Memphis, 38-year-old Dana Morales found herself slammed against her silver SUV in the harsh glow of a worn-out gas station. She'd just spent 12 grueling hours in a Nashville courtroom, part of her job as the Tennessee chief prosecutor, methodically breaking a cartel boss on the stand with her trademark mixture of calm expertise and piercing cross-examination. Tonight, all she wanted was to pump gas, then drive back home for a much-needed bath. Yet, here she was, hands locked in cuffs, her purse emptied onto the asphalt for the world to see. Two officers, Luca Holm, lean with a clipped blonde buzz cut and an air of smug impatience, and Brad Furlong, older and bulkier with salt and pepper stubble, towered over her. They wore sneers that spoke of immediate judgment, as though her suit, credentials, and even her well-earned position counted for nothing against the color of her skin. Holmes' flashlight roamed the interior of her SUV, shining pointedly on her embossed briefcase. Furlong, posture rigid, demanded to see her ID. With her heart pounding, Dana reached into her sleek purse, extracted her license, and handed it over. The younger officer read her name without expression, then radioed it in. Within moments, an exasperated dispatch voice confirmed, "Registered owner, no warrants, Chief Prosecutor, State of Tennessee." That caused the officers' faces to tighten ever so slightly, but instead of apologizing or releasing her, they doubled down. Furlong pressed Dana against the hood with a casual brutality, suggesting routine procedure. Holm rummaged through her purse as though determined to find contraband. Dana's stomach churned with anger she'd carefully honed over years of fighting injustice in court. Here, though, she was just another target for cops who'd decided that her background, her title, and even her legal expertise could be ignored. When the dispatch news sank in, neither Furlong nor Holm relaxed. Despite knowing who she was, they kept her cuffed, grimly smirking, and began muttering about how her car matched a stolen vehicle report. The hour dragged on, her wrists chafed raw by metal, until finally, with the abruptness of someone discarding useless evidence, they unlatched the cuffs, gave her a half-hearted, "You're free to go," and vanished in their squad car, tires squealing. Left alone under the fluorescent hum, Dana felt her indignation crystallize. She collected her scattered belongings, the side of her SUV still radiating warmth through the lingering imprint of her cheek. She tried reminding herself that she'd faced more intimidating threats, organized criminals, drug lords, but the memory of Furlong's sour breath and Holmes' smirk left her nauseous. Driving home, she nearly convinced herself it was a one-off, an ugly encounter she could put behind her. But at 3 a.m. that same night, her phone exploded with notifications. Some random on social media had posted a shaky bystander video capturing her pinned to her own SUV. And now it had thousands of views. A wave of hateful remarks spooled through her timeline, each comment another knife twisting in her gut. She must have resisted. That attitude says it all. Cops had every right. Panic gripped her as reporters converged on her doorstep, banging on the door, clamoring for a statement. By morning, Dana realized the situation was spiraling beyond a single unpleasant encounter. Public opinion, that fickle beast, was being manipulated by cunning half-truths and bold-faced lies. Worse yet, a local tabloid had run a sensational piece plastering her face under the headline, "Chief Prosecutor Sparks Altercation at Gas Station." Even though she was the victim, she saw that the narrative was being warped to paint her as the aggressor. Her sister Naomi called in tears, saying cameras were stationed outside her hospital, peppering staff with questions about Dana's state of mind. Everything about Dana's world, her once sterling reputation, her sense of personal security, suddenly felt precarious. Still, she vowed to harness every resource, every ounce of legal acumen to fight back against the smear campaign. The next morning, Dana entered the Tennessee prosecutor's building in Nashville, exuding poise despite a nagging sense of dread swirling in her chest. Her coil-styled hair pinned up in a flawless bun, she looked every inch the formidable chief attorney. Stares followed her as she strode across the marble floor, but she refused to let them see the turmoil roiling within. Right away, her assistant, Peter Cross, intercepted her. A tall, bespectacled analyst who had long been Dana's right hand, Peter clutched a tablet flashing emails with dire subject lines. Motion for mistrial, Reynolds bias, recusal demand, prosecutor's unrest, erodes credibility. Heart pounding, Dana scanned through them, disbelief and anger vying for dominance. Cases she'd worked on for years, drug trafficking, gang conspiracies, were now at risk because unscrupulous defense lawyers were seizing on the gas station video and painting her as a liar with a vendetta against law enforcement. With a trembling hand, Dana set aside the tablet and faced Peter. "They're undermining my entire record," she said quietly. He nodded, sorrow in his eyes, before explaining that the Attorney General, Roy Caldwell, requested an urgent meeting. Marching to Caldwell's office, Dana felt the tension thicken. Inside, she found Caldwell, a silver-haired official who'd once been her mentor, looking exhausted behind his desk, tie askew. "You're a lightning rod right now," he said heavily. "The media's crucifying you. Judges are spooked. The governor's office is breathing down my neck." When Dana launched into a defense, Caldwell lifted a weary hand. "I'm not questioning your record, Dana, but in politics, perception trumps truth. A short leave of absence might diffuse the pressure." Her throat constricted at the suggestion. She stepped back from her post. "So we're letting them win?" she demanded, voice low and dangerous. Caldwell insisted it was about saving her career from a bigger collapse. "Just for a few weeks," he said, avoiding her gaze. Fury smoldered in Dana's eyes. After years of unmasking corrupt deals and building ironclad prosecutions, she was told to lie low because a couple of brazen cops lied about her. She walked out, face burning, reaffirming to herself she wouldn't retreat. Throwing herself into damage control, she compiled an airtight complaint detailing the abuse at the gas station. Peter, at her direction, retrieved security footage from the Chevron station's cameras. The grainy footage clearly showed Furlong forcing Dana against the hood, rummaging through her personal belongings without cause, and mocking her credentials. Dana fired it off to Internal Affairs with a formal charge of unlawful detention and violation of civil rights. Soon, Captain Sheila Tyson of IA responded, "Received. Officer suspended pending investigation." For an exhilarating moment, Dana felt the tide shift. Pressing the advantage, she arranged a small news conference on the courthouse steps. Her voice rang steady as she laid out the facts. "I did nothing illegal. I was profiled and mistreated. On camera." The swirl of cameras that once hounded her for a salacious scoop now seemed to hesitate. Perhaps real evidence was swaying the public. Yet once back home, Dana found all 4 tires of her SUV slashed. Painted in lurid white across the hood was the word snitch. Panicked, she called 911 and then Peter. A neighbor's camera confirmed that a hulking figure resembling Furlong had done it around 2 a.m., his stride too confident to be accidental. When the police arrived, they took a few photos and departed with vague promises to look into it. Moments later, a text popped up from an unknown number. "Nice try staging that vandalism." The accusations piled on. A notorious local blog posted an accusation that Dana herself arranged the slashing for sympathy. She realized with growing horror that some were willing to believe every lie. Peter hovered, uncertain. "They won't stop," he muttered. Dana, feeling the old chill of dread, realized Furlong and Holm meant to escalate. She thought her newly filed complaint might silence them, but it only seemed to provoke more vicious retaliation. Then, in the early hours of another sleepless night, the phone rang. Naomi's tearful voice erupted, telling Dana that Miles, Naomi's 16-year-old son, had been attacked. "He's in the hospital. They found him on your lawn," she whispered, voice breaking. Heart pounding, Dana jumped into her car. Upon arrival, she saw the streaks of blood and a crumpled note on her front lawn reading, "Back off." Miles had a swollen eye, bruised ribs, and a concussion. The cops who showed up feigned neutrality, but Dana caught their skeptical glances. They murmured about gang involvement without evidence. As far as they were concerned, Miles was just another random teen casualty. Dana's immediate suspicion? Holm and Furlong's associates, punishing her through her family. Rage simmered in Dana's veins. She'd once believed that shining a light on wrongdoing through official channels would suffice, but these men were playing dirty, attacking a child. Word spread quickly among her colleagues. Some expressed quiet sympathy, while others distanced themselves, wary of the swirling scandal. Meanwhile, her cases faced mounting challenges. One judge abruptly stayed the sentencing of a major cartel boss she'd convicted, rumored to be an old golf buddy of Furlong's. Another colleague reported hearing whispers in the courthouse hallways, people branding Dana radioactive. Determined to strike back, Dana built a civil lawsuit targeting Holm and Furlong for assault, harassment, and conspiracy. She filed it, meeting with Judge Candace Brewster, known for her no-nonsense approach. In a 2-week hearing, culminating at Memphis's Central Court, Dana arrived wearing a bold crimson blazer, quietly ignoring the trembling fear in her gut. The other side was present. Holm, wiry and seething, and Furlong, red-faced, flanked by a union defense attorney with slicked-back hair. With Peter's help, Dana presented the Chevron footage, plus a neighbor's security videos capturing Furlong slashing her tires at night, along with hospital records of Miles's injuries. For all their sneers, Holm and Furlong had few plausible excuses. Judge Brewster hammered the gavel down. Judgment for Ms. Morales, damages awarded, and a mandatory public apology. A surge of relief washed over Dana as reporters pelted her with questions outside. Her phone buzzed continuously, Naomi praising her, Peter hailing her victory. That night, at her modest townhouse, she allowed herself a gentle moment of celebration over a glass of red wine. Just as she exhaled the tension, flames tore through her living room window. A Molotov cocktail. She and Peter barely escaped, coughing in the thick smoke, fleeing onto the lawn, with the inferno roaring behind them. Firefighters arrived too late to save the structure. And from across the street, Dana glimpsed Furlong's silhouette leaning from a pickup, a smug grin visible in the glow of the blaze. The inferno rendered her home a charred skeleton. Gone were the precious case files. Gone was the sense of safety. When dawn broke, she stood on the ash-littered grass in a soot-stained blazer, traumatized yet furious. "We're just getting started," she whispered to herself. Indeed, Furlong had torched her small triumph in a literal flash, making her realize that he viewed each of her legal victories as a challenge, not a deterrent. She fled to a drab motel with Peter, carrying only the clothes on her back, mind racing about her next move. If these cops were so emboldened, would they go after Naomi or Miles again? How deep did this corruption run? From that dingy motel on the outskirts of Nashville, Dana received a cryptic tip. A certain Sergeant Lauren Shaw claimed to have evidence linking Furlong to shakedowns, unreported confiscations, and even framed arrests. Meeting clandestinely at a riverside cafe, Sergeant Shaw spoke in hushed tones, revealing glimpses of sealed body cam logs, stashed away before Furlong could erase them. He's been pocketing cash from drug busts, targeting black families, and covering up evidence, Shaw said, sliding a folder across the weathered tabletop. It included partial witness statements, suspicious deposit records, and references to improbable, lost recordings. Dana's battered spirit flared with hope. Working through nights fueled by takeout coffee and her unstoppable sense of duty, she built a second criminal complaint against Furlong, this time for corruption. Peter was constantly at her side, tapping his laptop in the motel's cramped corner, tracking every bank statement and cross-referencing Shaw's intel. Eventually, the mounting evidence forced local authorities to act. The next day, news broke. Furlong was arrested and placed into custody, pending a full investigation. Dana watched it happen on a grainy motel TV, relief and caution swirling inside her. Holm, however, was still at large, presumably orchestrating the continuing smear campaign. Energized by progress, Dana called in political favors. She scored a meeting with Governor Elena McKinley, a wiry woman whose resolute gaze offered a glimpse of genuine concern. "I'll direct resources to clean up the department," she promised. At first, it looked like the tide was finally turning. News outlets credited Dana with exposing systemic rot in Memphis policing. Online, hashtags praising her courage began trending. Even Naomi texted from the hospital that Miles was improving, slowly regaining movement. But soon the rug was pulled out. Sergeant Shaw vanished, stopped answering calls, and her desk was reportedly cleared overnight. Then, a vile audio clip emerged online, allegedly capturing Dana bribing Shaw. "Keep quiet and you'll get paid," a distorted voice said, spliced seamlessly with Dana's real words from a prior interview. The blog that broke the story, Southern Investigations, had ties to Holm, who reemerged in the media, claiming he'd been framed by a prosecutor willing to fake anything. Proof or no proof, sensational headlines roared again. Dana's phone buzzed with demands from Governor McKinley's office. "Explain this audio." Dana recognized it as a masterful smear. The battered motel walls might have felt safer than the world outside, where the public was losing faith in her all over again. Only a few colleagues stuck their necks out. The rest, including the governor, began to pause on promises of reform. The night swallowed her intention, culminating in Naomi's tearful calls. "They're saying you fabricated everything." Miles, still healing, worried he'd be targeted again. Meanwhile, local cops gave Holm free rein to recast himself as a victim of a vindictive, career-hungry prosecutor. Dana nearly shattered her phone in frustration. And if that wasn't enough, rumors seeped in that her boss, Roy Caldwell, was undermining her behind the scenes. Documents bearing his signature suggested he'd known about Furlong's deeds yet turned a blind eye, or worse, actively enabled them. Dana tried to schedule an urgent meeting, but Caldwell was unavailable. The turning point came when footage from a body cam, originally thought lost, reappeared, only to be stolen again from the evidence locker. If it continued like this, she'd never conclusively prove the corruption swirling around Furlong, Holm, and whoever else might be pulling strings at higher levels. Yet her fight-or-flight instinct roared. She had come too far to walk away, regardless of the cost. Determined to press on, Dana arranged a public rally in downtown Memphis, inviting activists, citizens, and a smattering of local officials. She vowed to show everyone how easily power can be twisted by prejudice. Peter prepared a slideshow of every suspicious deposit, every photograph of battered victims, every lost piece of evidence. The crowd, several hundred strong, gathered on the marble steps of City Hall. Chanting for justice, they held signs proclaiming "End police abuse" and "Stand with Morales." For a fleeting moment, Dana felt buoyed by the communal energy, especially when Naomi and Miles hobbled to the microphone, describing how brutal intimidation tactics tore apart their sense of safety. Yet the mood shifted in an instant as the sound of sirens pierced the air. Riot police emerged, brandishing shields and launching tear gas canisters that hissed and popped, dousing the crowd in choking fumes. Panic rippled through the throng. In the stampede, a baton struck Dana's upper arm, jolting her with searing pain. She collapsed to her knees, gas burning her eyes. Screams arose from every direction, drowning out the chanting. As she blinked away tears, she saw Holmes smirking behind a line of police, directing them to kettle the protesters. Arrested yet again, this time on incitement charges, Dana spent the night locked in a cramped holding cell. The surreal experience of hearing her own name called through the bars, accusations swirling about how she caused a riot, left her delirious with both rage and disbelief. Even some of her closest supporters texted regrets. They didn't want to be seen as allies of a protester stirring the pot. When she was at last released the following morning, battered and disheartened, local headlines once again proclaimed her downfall. Prosecutor morale sparks riots. Holm leapt at the PR opportunity, telling cameras, "Morale's a menace to society, a woman who hates the police." Even as her personal credibility frayed, a glimmer of salvation arrived in the form of newly discovered body cam data. In an obscure police server, a glitch had preserved the raw feed from her first gas station ordeal, footage capturing Furlong, planting a bag of white powder in her SUV's console, a moment of comedic inattention perhaps, because the system had never been fully scrubbed. When Peter uncovered it, he burst into the shabby motel room with frantic excitement. "Dana, we've got them!" Immediately, Dana sent the data to Captain Sheila Tyson at Internal Affairs. The next phone call rang with triumph. "Furlong's finished," Tyson declared. Holmes' position also looked precarious, given his involvement. In the midst of her battered condition, her wrists sore from fresh cuffs, her eyes still red from tear gas, Dana felt victory closer than ever. News coverage pivoted to these newly surfaced files. It was official. Furlong was fired. Holm was under intense review. Dana's phone buzzed nonstop with messages from supporters chanting she'd redeemed herself. Miles finally was home from the hospital. Life, unbelievably, seemed to turn upright. Dana hopped in her battered SUV, driving on quiet back roads to reflect on that miraculous shift. Evidence that soared so high, it became unstoppable. But the euphoria proved short-lived. While Dana was returning from an exhausting day in Nashville, a pickup truck rammed her SUV off a deserted roadway, causing her to skid into the icy darkness of the Cumberland River. The memory of shrieking metal, swirling headlights, and freezing water swallowing her car would haunt her forever. She kicked free, gasping for air, and clawed her way to the muddy shore, half conscious. By the time local authorities found her, battered and bleeding, the truck was long gone. Lying in a hospital bed, bruises everywhere, Dana learned the sickening truth. "We lost that crucial footage," Peter lamented, voice trembling. "Data breach in the evidence locker." With a sinking heart, she recognized Holmes' invisible hand, punishing her for glimpsing even a brief moment of success. The near-death experience sparked national coverage. Networks labeled her a hero prosecutor, and cable shows debated the root of corruption in Memphis policing. Governor McKinley promised a state-level inquiry, but simultaneously a new wave of rumors flooded social media. Fake documents, posted on fringe blogs, accused Dana of forging entire convictions to boost her career. Fox News commentators demanded thorough investigations. CNN offered cautious support, but their headlines carried question marks. For every 10 messages praising her grit, 20 more venomous ones spat fraud, criminal, or dishonorable. People who once championed her suddenly backed away, unwilling to side with an embattled figure who might drag them down. Although battered physically and demoralized, Dana clung to a lifeline. The Department of Justice, spurred by images of her watery rescue, summoned her to Washington, D.C., to testify about systemic corruption in Tennessee law enforcement. Arriving wrapped in bandages and wearing a stiff black blazer, she spoke passionately before a panel of federal officials, detailing the chain of abuse she had uncovered. The evidence, plus her emotional story, led to raids on Furlong's property. National pundits sang her praises for about a minute. Then, in a swift reversal, an inflammatory memo surfaced online, supposedly an internal email from her office, claiming she framed innocent people to claim big convictions. Dana recognized the hallmarks of Holmes' sabotage: clever forging, opportunistically timed. The DOJ panel paused, pending further clarification. Returning to Memphis, she found herself besieged by a newly galvanized group of pro-police demonstrators chanting, "Morales lied," outside the motel where she and Peter had holed up. In news clips, Holmes sneered that Dana was the real criminal. She was battered by scorn from all angles. Calls from her boss, Roy Caldwell, halted, replaced by a tidal wave of cryptic emails suggesting Caldwell's involvement in protecting Furlong. Panicking, she rummaged for proof of Caldwell's sabotage and found it in a set of leaked messages referencing "end it before it starts," dated prior to her gas station fiasco. Caldwell's forced resignation soon followed, tying him directly to a deeper ring of conspirators. As the puzzle pieces slotted into place, Dana reeled from the realization. The man who once pinned the prosecutor's badge on her had orchestrated her torment, all because he saw her as a rising threat. Refusing to succumb, Dana pressed forward, determined to reveal the entire network. Beneath the flickering neon sign outside her rundown motel, she pored over battered files salvaged from the rubble of her townhouse. Peter scoured digital archives for any leftover clues. A precarious sense of hope flickered when he found a tiny voice recorder stashed in Dana's briefcase, presumably from a prior homicide trial. Clicking play, they heard Holmes' sneering voice issuing explicit threats. "You'll pay in blood if you keep pushing." The file ended with scuffling and a lighter flick, presumably from the arson that destroyed their motel room. Dazed, Dana realized Holmes' crew had missed that hidden device in their repeated attempts to silence her. Here was damning evidence of intimidation, capturing Holmes' venom in black and white. Early the next morning, they arranged to meet Mia Ellis, a maverick journalist with a reputation for exposing tough stories. Dana drove the back roads, wearing a worn denim jacket to hide her face, heart hammering through each mile. In an off-highway diner, she handed over the recorder. Mia's eyes widened as Holmes' vile words filtered through her headphones. "Send it everywhere," Dana said. And Mia wasted no time, uploading it to social media and sending it to every major news outlet. The reaction was swift and incendiary. Within hours, the public erupted. Cop threatens prosecutor with murder. Major networks started airing the clip, fueling calls for immediate arrests. The FBI mobilized to apprehend Holmes, who had apparently tried fleeing out of state. Furlong, too, was rearrested on additional charges of conspiracy and attempted murder. Cameras captured both men in cuffs, no room left for plausible deniability. Once again, Dana found herself the reluctant face of justice, her phone buzzing with celebratory messages from activists she'd met on the protest lines, from everyday Memphis residents fed up with corruption. Briefly, she permitted herself relief. Miles's injuries were healing, Naomi's job was secure, and the public was devouring a narrative of a single-minded prosecutor shining a light on racially motivated crime. Then, a final blow landed. A new leak exposed emails implicating Caldwell himself. He had planned to sabotage Dana from the beginning, feeding details of her schedule to Furlong's circle in hopes of scaring her into resigning. He resigned in disgrace, an empty figurehead undone by the chain of evidence Dana had championed. Standing outside the battered safe house, Dana looked out at the Memphis skyline, her wrists still faintly marked from the original handcuffs, her body scarred by the crash. With Holm and Furlong indicted, Caldwell cornered, and national agencies investigating, she sensed her cause was partially won, but came at a terrible cost. Her home was cinders, her confidence rattled, and her good name dragged through a swamp of lies. But she was alive, unbroken, and more convinced than ever that her voice was essential. She thought of how swiftly illusions of security can crumble when faced with institutional racism and collusion. The bittersweet truth settled in. If she'd known the price, she might have hesitated. But now, with so many lives touched by her fight, there was no turning back. In the days that followed, the media lionized Dana Morales as a modern-day David who slew multiple Goliaths. News anchors replayed dramatic clips, her limping out of the river, surviving a savage beating, hustling out of the burning townhouse. Yet beneath all the sensational coverage lay an uncomfortable reality. The friendliest headlines had already pivoted, asking, "Where were the other honest cops?" Or, "Why did the system ignore Furlong and Holmes' abuses for so long?" Dana reflected on these questions herself, recalling all the years she'd confidently believed that her powerful role as Tennessee's chief prosecutor would insulate her from prejudice. Instead, her position made her an even bigger threat to men who had grown accustomed to operating without scrutiny. Caldwell's downfall was further proof of how deeply rotten the system could become when those at the helm choose personal gain over justice. Betrayals by colleagues like Sergeant Shaw, revealed as a double agent, illustrated how easily trust can be shattered. Still, it was precisely Dana's relentless scrutiny, tenacity, and personal sacrifices that brought these hidden truths to light. None of it happened in isolation either. Naomi's unwavering love, Peter's tireless data digging, and Miles's courageous stand all fueled her determination. Together, they proved that change wasn't just an abstract ideal, but a demand that could upend entire power structures. She eventually faced a press conference, battered but unbowed, recounting how prejudice and corruption nearly killed her multiple times. Cameras zoomed in as she declared, "Silence was never an option. Justice demands we speak, even when it burns us." The image of her stitched temple and the deep circles under her eyes became a grim testament to the physical and emotional toll exacted by her quest. Still, the portion of the public that believed the smears didn't vanish. Online trolls questioned every victory. Some insisted she staged the collisions, the fires. She recognized the world would never align unanimously behind her, no matter how glaring the evidence. Yet, for every whisper of doubt, there was also a wave of renewed activism. Candlelight vigils outside her scorched townhouse lot, city council debates on reforming the Memphis PD, and lawmakers drafting legislation against racially biased policing. Dana sensed a fragile shift, not a complete overhaul, but an unmistakable rumble of people who refused to let intimidation stand. She told a reporter, "Real justice isn't a single verdict. It's 1,000 small battles that each demand our courage." Ultimately, Dana's story underscores a harrowing truth. Righteous power is never fully secure in a system rotted by prejudice. Betrayal can strike from any angle: a boss, a seemingly loyal detective, even the public you serve. Yet she shows that resilience thrives when principle ignites. She survived violence, smear campaigns, and institutional sabotage, forging a torch of truth from a simple audio recorder no one thought to destroy. Through every bruise, every burned file, every heartbreak, she learned that real victory demands constant vigilance. Perhaps that's the lesson. Speaking out carries a brutal cost, but cowering beneath injustice would be costlier still. If her scars and tears spark real accountability, then Dana Morales would bear them proudly. For in that fight, no matter the sleepless nights or ashen ruins, She'd proven that neither bullets nor bigotry could permanently silence a relentless pursuit of justice.